The Long Walk is much more than just a long walk. Yes, on the surface level, it's just a bunch of guys walking and talking and competing for money. But on a deeper level, it's a story about desperation, class disparity, and simply just living in the moment. So let's break down and talk about what makes this movie so great. So if you haven't heard of The Long Walk, it's an adaptation of a Stephen King novel where it follows a group of 50 boys in a post-Civil War torn America that enter a contest where they must walk until there is only one man left alive. With that said, as always, before we get started, if you're new here, my name is Aaron and I talk all things movies and TV, but really mostly movies, so if you're into that sort of thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. Also, if you like my videos, hit that like button while you're at it. And of course, if you've already seen the movie, let me know your thoughts on it down below in the comments. But without further ado, let's talk about The Long Walk. Jumping right into the good for this movie, and the first thing I have here is this cast. Now, for me, the main draw of this movie was the cast and the dynamic that these boys had with one another. We had great performances all around from Cooper Hoffman, Ben Wang, Nyout. Even the side characters brought something to the table. But the best performance by far, and you've probably heard this before, is easily David Jonsson. I mean, wow. Take a bow, my friend, because he was phenomenal in this, and I'm not trying to overreact to this performance, but I do really hope that he gets some type of Oscar recognition for what he did in this movie. He had so many little lines of dialogue that were not only delivered beautifully, but were wise and provided insight on some of the themes in this movie. But his relationship with Cooper Hoffman's character, who also had a great performance himself, really made them the heart of this film. And I kid you not, I could listen to the dialogue and the conversations that these two had in this movie all day long. It just felt like every conversation these two had meant something, and I guess that's a real credit to the writing of this movie and also their performances as well, because when those two were on screen and they were talking, you were tuned in because you were like, man, they're going to say something really important that's going to make you think and only add to this movie. Outside of them, we also had Nyout and Ben Wang, who rounded out our main four characters in this movie, and that dynamic between those four was a lot of fun to watch on screen, and they kept you intrigued in a movie that was mainly just a bunch of guys walking and talking. But through that dialogue, it was able to explore its main characters and its themes, which brings me to the main part of this video, and that is why this movie is much more than just a long walk. So the next thing I have for the good is just how this movie handled its themes and its characters. Now, as I just said, this movie does a good job at getting to know its main characters. Everyone has a pretty dark backstory on why they are doing this long walk, so we are allowed to get to know and care about each of them. But this leans into that main theme of desperation and what people will do when they hit rock bottom. This walk is technically voluntary, but for them it's not, because they are desperate and that prize that they could potentially win is worth the risk of their life, because they essentially feel like they have nothing else. So when those deaths start happening, you feel each and every last one of them, and each one of them is heartbreaking. And that just gives this movie as a whole an eerie feeling throughout the entire thing, because you know only one of these guys is going to make it out alive, so it gives it a very emotionally heavy tone. But with that, it also makes you appreciate those little moments of levity that this film has in between those darker moments as well. And all that leans into another theme that this movie has, which is just simply living in and enjoying the moment. Throughout all the dark moments in this movie, every now and then the boys would find something to bond over and have this carefree, wholesome moment. And it was those moments that David Jonsson's character would constantly talk about in this movie. He wasn't worried about the end of this walk, which is something that he couldn't see. He was only worried about living to experience the next moment, which helped him keep walking. And as an audience member watching this film, when those moments happened, you wanted to stay there as long as you could, because everything else that was happening to these boys during this walk outside of that just absolutely sucked. So when those moments of levity happened, you really felt the weight of them and how important they were. I know the novel was an allegory for men going off to fight in the Vietnam War, but I think this movie can be looked at as an allegory for the walk of life itself. Just like the boys on this walk, you will experience desperation, heartbreak, bad things, and you don't know when this journey is going to end. But you will also experience moments of levity, joy, and peace. And those are the things that you live for, as well as the things that keep you going. So I just think this movie did a great job at integrating its themes in a premise that, if not handled right, can feel monotonous and boring. Moving on to the so-so, and the only thing I have here is that as much as this movie did a good job at getting to know its main characters, we really didn't get to dive into the side characters as much. The performances we got for them were great, but we didn't get to know that much about them until it was their turn to die. Essentially, we would just get this quick little monologue from them on who they were and a little bit on their backstory right before they died, in an attempt to make their death hit a little bit harder. Now, don't get me wrong, their deaths were still sad, but it felt like this movie was like, hey, this guy's about to die, so let's have him say something so the audience can feel bad for him. But this is also one of those things that is completely understandable because this is an ensemble cast in this movie, and when you have an ensemble cast, it's really tough to get to know each and every character. And finally, getting into the bad, and the only thing I have here is really more of a personal thing, but I would have loved to learn more about the outside world and what the public does during this long walk. I'm not familiar with the book too much, so I don't know if it explains this and that, but this movie does mention that the outside world watches this walk, but that's about it. Even if it would have made the movie a little longer, I would have loved to see the public's reaction to some of these deaths and how they felt about everything, similar to what we got in the Hunger Games, which is pretty ironic to say because the director of this movie, Francis Lawrence, also directed some of the Hunger Games movies as well. But long story short, I would have just loved to learn more about how this society works. But for my final thoughts, this movie has found its way into my top 10 movies of the year. The performances are great, with Cooper Hoffman and David Jonsson leading the way, and the dynamic between these characters is what keeps you engaged. It makes you feel everything that happens and handles its themes very well, in my opinion. So on my personal tier list, this goes in the great for me and is a must watch. Those are my thoughts on The Long Walk. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments, and as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.